Being in aviation is something I do quite a bit. Thought I'd incorporate that into the fun, so we're gonna do some flour bombing. We're dropping flour as in F-L-O-U-R, flour. So my bombers are gonna be Jedediah, Jeremiah, and Jason.
It's gonna be a stiff competition.
I'm all right, I can still go.
I feel a little bit queasy,
Yeah.
but not too bad.
Our family has a big problem with getting motion sick.
You okay? I'm good. Are you sure? Just thinking about getting some air.
Hey you guys, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. There's a lot of things going on with the Duggars, and one of them is, are any more of the kids free? Have anyone else broken free? What's the status of the family? Has there been any more division happening? Are there any more kids waking up? I had an opportunity to speak with my source who's known the Duggars for like, very long time. They were way back at the church that the Duggars used to go to when everything fell apart with Josh. And I learned a few things about the family that I have not yet heard before, and I learned things about some of the kids I did not know about. Obviously, with this world, we know that Jim Bob has alleged very tight control over the kids. He runs the family business. He has their finances locked down around him, most of the boys working for him. And it has put them in positions where even if they don't necessarily agree with their father, they are still financially tied to their father. And so therefore, not agreeing with Jim Bob can get you into trouble, even though you're a grown adult. So when we talk about if people are free, it really depends on how financially tied they are to their father. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because technically speaking, there are only two of the kids that are completely freed from Jim Bob and his financial control. So the two kids that obviously are not controlled by Jim Bob financially are Jill and Jinger. So we already knew that Jill Duggar had completely cut ties with her father and was not at all financially connected to him. In fact, she had to ask for their own to get paid. She had to bring in an attorney to essentially sue her father to get her rightful pay for her time on the show. And she has been very vocal about her not being a part of the show, not being connected to the family, having sort of a distance relationship with her family. But one person that is also free that we don't spend a lot of time talking about is Jinger. So Jinger Duggar, even though she remained on Counting On, she was one of the only kids that had her own alleged to have her own contract with the show, which was apparently negotiated by her and Jeremy a couple years before. Jinger and Jeremy moved to California, which also created a alleged rift between Jim Bob and Michelle because they didn't want her moving to California. But one of the big things that you should note is that Jinger and Jeremy are completely financially independent and not at all connected to Jim Bob whatsoever in terms of their money. So they are doing their own thing in California. Jeremy is in the Masters of Seminary. They've written a book. They have their podcast. They use their social media. So they have ways that they are making their money on their own where they're not connected at all to Jim Bob. This has been probably a sticking point for Jim Bob because Jeremy and Jim Bob have had a contentious relationship, specifically because Jeremy has a more reformed belief system and a more mainstream belief system than Jim Bob. And that in and of itself created quite the chaos, and they talked about it in their book. So from financial perspectives, Jinger and Jill are not under the control of their parents. And that's why when you saw the statements that came out from them, they were very different than the rest of the family. And that's because they didn't have to, what they said did not matter because Jim Bob doesn't hold purse strings controlling what they do and they don't say. So why you might have not seen such compelling statements from, say, Jessa is because Jessa and Ben are not free from Jim Bob's control. And we talked about this before, but this is what the friend said, that she might have her own social media revenue, but they don't know. They don't know if Jim Bob is somehow getting the revenue from Jessa. Ben is the one who's teaching the kids, and he gets directly paid by the Duggars. So Ben has been the tutor for years for the kids. He's financial income comes from the Duggars. And, you know, I've told you that Ben is sort of the helper around the house, works for Michelle, teaches the kids. So because of that, they don't have the ability to sort of go off the family script. They don't have the ability to say what they want, because if they do, Ben could lose his job, they could lose their income, that kind of thing. Joseph, even though he has his father-in-law and his dad had that rift happen, Joe is still financially dependent on his dad because he works for him in real estate. Now, Joe is described as a really good guy, and everyone I speak to has the most amazing things to say about Joe. And in terms of like how Joe is handling the situation between Jim Bob and Paul having this rift, he's in a tough spot because he clearly loves both men. And I think with the way that it works, he can't be too harsh on his dad because his dad and he are in business together. John David, even though he has his own MediCorp thing and he has some businesses that are outside of the Duggar family, he's also quite connected to the Duggars financially because a lot of his businesses are on the names of Duggar LLCs. He's also done construction and done he has all of those licenses for he helps with the Duggar construction stuff, and he helps with the house flipping stuff. And even though he, doesn't have a house that he got from the Duggars, he does have that MediCorp building. And even though MediCorp is technically independent from his father, according to records that they filed with the IRS, he's not deriving income from it. So technically, John David, while he has a more he lives in a trailer, he didn't take a house from his dad, that kind of thing. He may have gotten that building from his dad, so that could have been a compromise. But John David is technically not free, but he's still also described as a really good guy. But that could also be why John David and Joe did not make statements, because financially they are dependent on their father. Now, Jed is also very in Jim Bob's pocket. So Jed Duggar runs one of the car dealerships that the Duggars have, and he has the house that is on the car dealership, which Jim Bob had flipped to him right before he got married. So, and then Jim Bob had put a huge, Jim Bob and him had these aspirations of getting Jed into politics, and Jed is apparently very akin to, a lot of people say that Jed has a relationship or has a physical resemblance to Josh. And a lot of the people I talk to say that Jed is probably the most like his dad or like his brother, in that, he has maybe a sense of entitlement, a sense of, high confidence, ego, thinks he's like God's gift to women, that kind of thing. But, he's just sort of a lot like Josh and Jim in that shows tendencies that he has sort of that look at me sort of personality. You don't hear the same kind of things about Jed from people. No one says when you bring up Jed's name, it's never like Jed's a really great guy. It's just more like, oh, Jed. You know what I'm saying? So then there's Jeremiah. Now, Jeremiah is also not independent. He still technically lives at home. And he's not financially independent either. He has the planes and he does the aviation stuff with his dad. And he also got his real estate license. So he also is working in real estate with his father. So Jeremiah and Jed did not make statements. The reason why, they're financially tied to their dad. Jason, who is younger than them, and he is but older than James and Justin, has been the most successful financially, and he's actually, according to my source, financially independent. So of all of the boys that this person believes could potentially be waking up and get some sort of separation from the Duggars, they suspect it could be Jason. So Jason is described as someone who's quiet, that keeps to themselves, but also very financially successful. In fact, the most financially successful of all of the boys, builds houses, has his own business. He's completely financially free from his father. And Jason listens to country music, you guys. Alert the authorities. Okay, so Jason listens to country music. There's some questions about JoyAnna, and the JoyAnna discussion is still sort of up in the air because it depends on who you talk to. Joy and Austin have a construction business, and it seems to be technically independent from the Duggars, although I don't know how independent they are from the Duggars. I don't know how it's just Austin's company and they wouldn't be doing some work with Jim Bob. I do have a belief that even though they have their own company, that Austin and Joy are still well connected in terms of some level of business connection to the Duggars, because Joy and Austin also had a very tempered statement, though Austin does have the ability more than the others to actually break free if they wanted to with their own construction company. So they could break free, but Joy and Austin are sort of like in this position where they're sort of like kind of financially independent, but not kind of like financially independent. So, and she's still very close to her family. James obviously works for his dad, and then Justin and Claire. Justin is down in Texas. He has kind of separated himself and he's working for Claire's father in construction. I don't really know what's going on with Justin. Justin left the family very young. He moved to Texas. He was down in Texas, I think, before they even got married. I don't know where, in terms of like the freedom aspect, he hasn't been back in Arkansas in a long time. Part of me thinks that he may have left specifically because he wanted to get away from that. He wanted a little bit more freedom. Even though the Spivies are a part of the IBLP, they're a lot more liberal than the Duggars. I mean, the girls wear pants, and, you know, I think they have a little bit more progressive feelings than the Duggars. I don't think they're like the super liberal people, but they're more liberal than the Duggars. So I do think he gets more freedom being down in Texas than he would if he were in Arkansas, and he's away from his family, so Jim Bob can't have as much control on him. And Justin and Claire have not said anything about anything, really. And they also, if you remember, got married, and they kind of did their own thing. They didn't, I mean, even though the show's canceled, it wasn't their wedding wasn't filmed. So this is kind of where we're at. Does it surprise you to think that Jason might be waking up? I'm not. Do you know why? Jason goes down to Texas a lot. Jason travels a lot as well, and he's been spending more and more time away from the family. He's the one that frequently will go down to Texas and spend time with the Spivies. Hillary Spivey has talked in great detail about how much she adores Jason and just what a great kid Jason is. And Jason and Justin are very close, and so I think in a way, Justin getting away might have helped sort of propel and inspire Jason. And this idea that he doesn't rely on his father for money is really inspiring to me, to know that there are kids in this family that are not going to be like, well, dad gave me everything, so I'm going to do things my way. Jason's more like, no, I'm going to have my own business and I'm not going to rely on my dad. So Jason might be waking up, which gives me hope. And we'll have to just wait and see about the other ones. But right now, you're not going to see anyone deviate from the Duggars script, because until they have financial freedom, they can't. Jill and Ginger are free. Jason's waking up. Justin's kind of already out there. And there's some wild cards with Joy. But Jessa and Ben are still deeply entrenched. Joseph is stuck, Jeremiah's stuck, and Jed is apparently the next Josh. Well, no, not Josh in that he's going to commit crimes, but the next budding star of Jim Bob's. He has lots of plans for Jed. All right, you guys, tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye.